Good evening once again. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Thank you for joining us. And for those of you joining us for the first time, a very special thank you. Let me take a moment to introduce you to the goal of this show. It's about having conversations with people about their journeys. How are they using their gifts and talents to help others? How are they making a positive contribution to humanity? So I'm always looking for people, especially ordinary people, doing extraordinary things or doing things extraordinarily well. Because I believe that everybody has a story to tell. And there are so many treasures that can be found in those stories if we but listen. And I can't stress enough how important it is for us to pay attention. As a matter of fact, it is one of the points my guest tonight made in his ad about paying attention. It's very important. If we but listen, there's an old Chinese proverb that says if you listen to a wise man, or a single conversation with a wise man is worth more than 10 years of study. And there is a wise man in the studio here tonight. His name is Valence Williams. At least I believe so. And I am thankful. I'm honored to have him here. I'm thankful that he would grace his time. He'd be so generous with his time tonight to sit with me and have this conversation. So I am going to take full advantage of this evening conversation with Valence Williams. And I promise you that by the end of the show, we will not only have a more three-dimensional perspective of who Valence Williams is, but we will have a wonderful, intriguing, informative, and inspiring conversation. Tonight, I anticipate a packed show, so I will cut short my monologue and take a break, and then I'll introduce you. We are back. For those of you now joining us, I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Gentleman next to me is our guest tonight, Valence Williams. Good evening, sir.
Good evening to you, sir.
It's really a pleasure and an honor to have you here tonight, sir.
It's a pleasure to do your show. Having done many shows over the years, and to see that the way you've structured this is very impressive.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Let me start by just giving a synopsis of your bio. Valence M. Williams, Senior VP of Aegis Capital, 28 years of trading commodity futures, stocks, bonds, currencies, and derivatives, writer, radio personality and TV. Was responsible for helping to open up Wall Street for more minority hiring. Ex-chairman of the Membership and Economic Committee for the Caribbean American Chamber of Commerce. Ex-chairman of the International Committee for 100 Black Men of New York. We started the Eagle Academy for Boys High School and became mentors. I convinced the organization to open a junior high school in Brooklyn as a feeder for the high school, Eagle Academy. When the prep schools started opening their doors to diversity, Valence Williams recruited several inner city kids for Philip Exeter, Lawrenceville, Porter School for Girls, and Salisbury School for Boys. Served on community board for 14 years, community board 14 for several years. Developed his political instincts at Howard University. Globalization, and this is a quote: globalization blended with technology, and the removal of dictatorial and corrupt individuals could raise the standard of living of those below the poverty line. Beyond the brilliance, the social and political astuteness, the popularity, the charisma, the eloquence in conversation, poise, and personal presentation, who is Valence Williams?
Valence Williams, I would say, is just an individual whose genetic makeup just drives him to be part of anything that is moving, growing, and is ready to be embellished. That is as basic as I can put it.
Fair enough, fair enough. What is one of your favorite quotes that inspires you?
One of my favorite quotes that inspired me is when Richard Nixon decided to go to China.
Hold on a second. Somebody's saying they can't hear. Go ahead, Violence.
When when Richard Nixon decided that he wanted to go to China in 1971, he was prepared by Henry Kissinger. And Kissinger explained to him that the premier, Chu Enlai,
Mhm.
was an aficionado of French literature, history, and culture.
Go ahead.
Yes, Kissinger was preparing Richard Nixon.
Hold on. They're saying they cannot hear Violence. Are you hearing him now? Just do a test, Violence.
Yes, 1, 2, 3.
Can you hear him now? Okay, good. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Talking about Richard Nixon.
yeah, the question was, what is one of my favorite quotes, right?
You're right.
Right. Well, it was in 1972, and Richard Nixon had decided to break the Cold War and go to China. But he really didn't know much about the premier of China or the Chinese culture. So Henry Kissinger decided to prepare him and turned to him and let him know that the premier, who was really the power outside of Mao Zedong, it was Chu Enlai. He said, well, Chu Enlai, if you want to really break the ice with him, you have to familiarize yourself with French history, literature, and culture, because this man is an aficionado.
I hate to do this, Valence. I'm hearing someone is saying the stream is problematic. And I want to make sure that everybody gets the show properly or as wholesome as possible. Is everybody else having a problem with the streaming? Somebody else said, Rain Rocket said it's fine, stream is fine. Okay, sorry. I apologize for that.
All right.
Go ahead.
So when Richard Nixon gets to China and he meets Chu Enlai and they're going for a walk in the garden, Richard Nixon, to break the ice, says to Chu Enlai, the premier of China, he said, Mr. Premier, what do you think of the French Revolution? And Chu Enlai looked at him and said, it's still too early to tell. French Revolution was in 1769, and he was there in 1971. So don't rush. still too early to tell.
I love that. I love that a lot. Um, what did you enjoy reading as a youngster growing up in Guyana?
Oh, as a youngster in Guyana, I thought that Shakespeare was very interesting. I particularly enjoyed the friendship with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, because apparently Julius Caesar had gotten such a horrible reputation, no one was seemingly going to his funeral, and it was Mark Antony that got them to come up. This is why to this day we remember that particular line from him, Romans, friends, countrymen. And because he knew they were not going to show, he could not say, come to the funeral. He said, lend me your ear. He was borrowing their ear. So Julius Caesar was interesting. But beyond that, the little pieces that I read about what we used to call Nancy stories,
Yes.
those were, I think, very, very entertaining. It would possibly be cartoonish in this modern society, but those were things that were quite impressive to me.
As a child, who is one of the most impressive grown-ups, or who was one of the most impressive grown-ups to you, and why?
Well, that is very interesting. I would have to say my father. My father was Joe Williams. He would have been considered a butcher by profession, but he was more than a butcher. He was a businessman. He was an entrepreneur. He did business with he was supplying beef and pork to all the Chinese restaurants. Yeah? And he would wake me up very early in the morning, right? 5 o'clock in the morning, which I'm still doing, by the way. And he would take you into the abattoir, and you would have to help him deliver these to these restaurants. So I had early interaction with the Chinese businessmen. You see? So I noticed also that he took care of all the kids in the neighborhood. He fed the less fortunate. So I read about lots of men like Churchill and them, but I wasn't close to Churchill. I was close to Joe Williams. And his reputation, I had left Guyana, and when he died, I went back. And at his funeral, there was a bus with about 30 kids, and he had raised all of them, none of them biological. But it was the grave digger that dug his grave that put him in perspective. He said, your father, Joe Williams, was such a wonderful human being. I had to go down 6 3/4 feet to give Joe a little more room to rest his head. It was quite profound, I must say. Very profound.
I'm going to ask you this question. I mean, you speak with such eloquence. I have to ask you this. What were you like at age 12, if you can remember? I mean, you remember your father so vividly.
Well, at age 12, I was into just about every sport that was being played. Right? I liked playing sports, and but there was a rule in the family that we had to learn to play the piano. So the first day I went to Miss London's piano lessons, I was the only boy. There were 12 girls, and I thought this was kind of sissy, you know what I mean? But then I had to look at it from a different perspective, that the odds were in my favor. You see what I'm saying? So I started learning to play the piano, but then the machismo in me said, because in those days they would send a man from the Royal School of Music in London, an adjudicator. So we had to do grade 1 practical and theory, grade 2, and by grade 8 you were an accomplished pianist. So the thing that motivated me is that I told myself, none of these girls will beat me. But then Jem London, who was the daughter of the music teacher, took a liking to me, and she was the one that really helped me to enhance my skills. But somewhere along the line, I fell in love with the steel band pan, and that was the end of my piano playing, because the pan was really so rootsy. I played pan.
Wow.
Right.
You still play to this day?
I don't play to this day, but if I choose to, I would pick it up right away. It was that good.
You mentioned gaff on the ad,
Oh yeah.
right? At what age did you realize you had a knack for gaffing?
Well, I think gaffing is something that is really cultural.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be so rude as to give myself alone a nap, because all the men and women in my family were gaffed. The gaffing was where all the information was passing. And then there was the corner line. When we were on the corner, man, there was no TV on the corner. So we had to entertain ourselves. And there was a certain element of freedom. It's a corner. It's like a right angle triangle, so to speak.
Yeah.
And there were no walls on the corner. And girls could come on the corner. There were certain girls that would come on the corner. And the interesting thing, the art of poetry and telling stories came up on the corner. Now, for instance, if you went to see a movie, the boys couldn't afford to go. You had to come back on the corner and really tell the whole story. Everything. You had to remember the director, the producer, the best line. For instance, in the lines like, Shane, come back, Shane, mommy needs you. That kind of stuff. And the fastest gun alive, and the whole concept that being the fastest gun alive was a miserable life, because every day you had to kill a bunch of guys coming to test you. So Glenn Ford had to fake his death, move to a small town and bury his guns to live in peace. Then 3 cats came looking for him, called his mom. She said, you gotta be your fastest, but let it be known you only put 3 bullets in the holster. No. They left him alone after that.
How do you get the best out of a person? What do you do to inspire and motivate those you mentor?
Well, the first thing I do is really ask them what is their interest.
Mm-hmm.
And we gaff. It's all about talking. Because, for instance, teaching was one of the things that I also grew up around teachers. And I find that teaching is very euphemistic. It's very gratifying profession. It's unfortunate that teachers don't make more than people that are building computers and writing programs. Mm-hmm. All right? However, to motivate anyone, I think you really got to find out what it is that person has an interest in. Because I remember I went to junior high schools, because after I got to Wall Street, I thought I should share what Wall Street was all about with the people around age 11, 12. You learn it early. So when I got to this school in Bedford-Stuyvesant, they told me, they said, this young boy here, don't even attempt to talk to him. He doesn't want to learn anything. But I convinced myself that every human being wants to learn something. They may not want to learn what you want them to learn. So I asked him what's his interest. He said, man, I want to be the best pickpocket. I turned around. I said, who told you about me, man? I said at age 13 in Regent Street, man, they used to put the pants up on the line with a wallet in the pocket, and you had to pull a wallet out with 2 fingers without the line shaking. He said, I never heard of that. That opened the dialogue. And today he's an excellent lawyer.
Wow. I never heard of that myself.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Guyana.
Yes, a lot.
You see, tonight is a special night here for me as well, Valence.
Yeah.
And understanding the circular flow and the willingness to grow, pay careful attention to the mambo. That's your statement on your ad.
Yes.
Why is willingness to grow such an important part of your counsel?
Willingness, well, everything is about growing, yeah? Mm-hmm. And, we, as human beings, we grow physically, mentally, spiritually. Every element of life there's some growing process that takes place. And I think there's a Japanese word called kaizen. Continuous education, continuous growth, you know what I mean? So, and the circular flow, it's circular flow, it's a term that sounds like it's an economic term. It sounds like it's something intellectual. But it comes back to what goes around comes around. If you look at the sea, there's a flow that goes. So the circular flow is taking it around so everyone could be touched. There was a period called the Pangea period where there was no water separating the earth. Mm-hmm. And there was a circular flow because everybody was connected. The whole earth was connected. So That's a circular flow.
And that's a very important part of what you do is connecting,
Yeah.
connectedness and connecting
Well,
people.
Malcolm Gladwell said it in the book he wrote, The Tipping Point.
The different points.
But some of us are connectors, and I think that's probably what I am because
I agree with that. Mambo, form form from how I understand it, is an appropriate metaphor for advice, chat, gaff, or guidance. What are we if we don't pay attention to the mambo?
well, you see, the thing is, you got to go back to Mambo, as most people heard the word, is really a dance that is started in Cuba. But if you go a little further back, out of Central Africa, the black slaves that went to Cuba came out from a tribe called the King Congo, and the word King, and they came up with the word Mambo, and it meant speaking to the gods. So tonight, this Mambo is really our audience are the gods. We're speaking to the gods. You see. Then, if you really, really go through the history of the Mambo, in the 30s, Orontes and Cortez were two brothers, and they wrote the first Mambo song. And then Paris Prado took it over. And then Benny Moré, out of Cuba, took the Mambo to another level. But it was the Mambo and the Mambo King that is responsible for the 30-minute sitcom that we will watch today. To this day, I Love Lucy is considered the greatest sitcom that ever created. It was Ricky Ricardo. He came from Cuba with the Mambo. So the Mambo is music, it's a dance, it's a form of communication. And the guys that started it was the ones that said, Vamos la amambie, let's mambo.
That's mambo.
Yes.
But let's take it in the context of a gaff,
Yes.
as we are doing here tonight,
Yeah.
conversing. Growing up in Guyana, what was your first encounter or introduction to mambo?
Well, it started with the way my father would talk to you, because he was really a great storyteller. So he and I could sit down on Mambo very easily because he gave us all the whole history of boxing. Because Joe Louis that was one of the people he idolized. He was a boxing promoter, you see. Mm-hmm. So his whole thing was passing on the information that he had about actually experiences of life. And he did a range of things, I remember when I tried to do business with Rex McKay. I heard that Rex McKay, I was sitting with Morgan Stanley, and something said, give Rex McKay a call. And when I called him, he said, young man, you have an interesting voice. Who are you and who's your father? I said, my father is Joe Williams. He said, Joe Williams, the butcher? He said, when we were young boys, your father would pull up a van and put on his boots and show us how to play football. And when he would finish, he'd give both teams some money because we were young boys then. The business was done. The business was done for me 20, 30, 40 years before. You see what I mean?
Let me see if I can weave these interesting strands, or social strands you just offered just now into a fabric. Continuity, the importance of storytelling, of passing it on to the young. And we will talk about that just when you've worked a lot with young people and so on.
Right.
And a vested interest in preserving culture, preserving history, heritage, and all these things. Yeah. And here you have this example of this man, a butcher.
Right.
That's so well respected.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That people keep telling you stories.
Yes.
Of the wonderful things he has done.
Right.
How has that helped to mold you into who you have become, or
Well, see, it's the thing is, there's certain things when you try to understand the word genes, right? Mm-hmm. And one of my phrases is, if you have designer genes, you have designer genes, no pun intended. Mm-hmm. And you could only be that which is genetically in your being. So what my father was and the continuity of that is just, it's not something, it's just easy for it to flow out.
Right. And I want to say this is an aside, I just remembered it. when we first spoke
Yes.
about coming on
Coming
CWS,
right.
I spent 90% of the time, or 95, laughing.
I remember that.
Right. And why you come is you like to laugh, but you the thing about you, Valence, is that you tell stories so well, and you're jovial with it. But in that, there's a lot of education.
Right.
There's a lot of wisdom.
Precisely so.
And in that short space of time, you've passed on a lot to me. And so when you said, okay, let's do this,
Yes.
I was filled with joy. I was,
Yeah.
overflowing with joy.
Yeah.
But what I want to bring out in what I'm saying here tonight is that there are a couple of people, several people, men, who said to me, wait a minute, Valence is coming on your show. I always wondered who this guy is. I always wondered what he does. Every time I see him, I'm drawn to him. I'm drawn to his charisma. I'm drawn to the way he, presents himself. What does that mean to you, hearing and knowing that your love for young people, but hearing young men who look at you with in such awe and such respect? What does that mean to you?
Well, it started from Guyana, right? From the family tribe, from the people, the guys that I hung out with, the way the people that taught me. But then when I came to the United States and went to Howard University, we were in the throes of the civil rights movement. Some of the men that were in school with me were Joey Jagan and Roger Luncheon, to name a few that everyone might know. But it was civil rights, and we were in the midst of it, right? And one of the things that they did with us somewhere deep in our psyche at Howard is they said to us, and without verbally, whether it was verbally or non-verbally, you have to go back in your community and make a difference, you see? And the crowd that I was with, because coming in from Guyana, I hung out across the board, everything from the bad boys to the bright boys. When Martin Luther King his approach was most marching peace and love, we were ready to shoot some guns, right? That's how the Black Panther Party got going. So in the early stages of the Panther Party, this is why I have some things that probably I cannot say on this show, but when you really know the Assata Shakur story, you would really understand why it had to go there.
I often say on this show that I'm very obedient to the flow. And regardless of what questions I have, I follow the flow because I say the flow knows best. And you brought up Howard University. You brought up the in the heart or nucleus of the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
I think it was Malcolm X who said that how could you fight for civil rights, or a citizen? If you're a citizen, you don't need to fight for civil rights, right? And that makes a whole lot of sense.
It really did.
But let me ask you something. Coming from Guyana in the 60s, right? Or 60s,
right, 60s, right.
60s. It was a different time, different socio-political atmosphere. Coming here what was that like for you in terms of a social contrast? What was that like?
Yeah, because I could walk all over Guyana. I had freedom. I didn't have to worry about some of the things, the oppressive kind of behavior that I can't walk straight into. You know what I mean? So that really fired me up more than anything else. I saw where people were subjugated to real second-class citizens and couldn't go certain places, couldn't talk to certain people, couldn't get jobs in certain places, you know what I mean? So it really was kind of a cultural shock. So one had to get involved. And we were all involved in some form or fashion.
So one more question well, I can't say one more question because that's a period that really, interests me. What did you do? How did you channel that energy, that rebellious spirit that must have come?
Man, that rebellious spirit had me with handcuffs on me a couple of times because we were in every march. We were it was so. Some of the things were so offensive you couldn't help but fight back. You see what I'm saying? And if you were to, there's a wonderful movie called Talk to Me with that Don Cheadle played. P.D. Green. P.D. Green was a radio personality. and Petey Green was the first guy that came out of jail and went on the radio station and was telling the real story. And when Martin Luther King died, Washington D.C. was in an uproar. They were going to burn down the whole city. It was only Petey Green could stop them. This was how violent things had gotten. You know what I mean? So the whole Black Panther movement came out out of the fact that marching and with peace and love was not enough. They were not listening. So we as young people, we got real angry, man. We got very angry.
But that was a real serious fear within the republic at that time, that there was nobody within the black community that, well, not that there wasn't anybody talking to the people, but there may come a time when the people wouldn't even listen to them because of how they were being treated, and you know.
Yeah, because you see, this is why John Kennedy became so popular, because John Kennedy really came to make a difference. You see, because it was a very oppressive and disrespectful kind of thing that was taking place in this country. You know, if you were to go back and really check Condoleezza Rice, who so many black people hated, and when she told her story about Alabama, because I read her book, there's a story about the 16th Street bombing of that church. Condoleezza was supposed to be in that church in Sunday school that afternoon. It's just that she got sick and they bombed the church, and her best friend, she was 11 years old, Denise, her best friend, died. And she went to the University of Denver to study classical piano and ran into Joseph Corbell, who had come from Czechoslovakia's supreme oppression. And when she told him the experience in Alabama. Her father was a great football coach, but because of racism, no school would give him a shot. He took the most broken down black high school and won the national championship. I don't know if you may remember at one point when the NFL commissioner job was open, she was being considered.
Yeah.
Because she told them that national security, she was good at national security because she learned offense and defense from her father. So it was Joseph Corbell, whose other daughter was Madeleine Albright, biological. So he considered Madeleine Albright and Candice's two daughters. So when Condoleezza went into the Republican Party, Madeleine Albright called her and said, "How could you?" He said, "After I told your father what I experienced in Alabama," he said, "you got to go in the Republican Party." She never said anything negative about Obama.
Strategy, yeah?
Yes.
Never judge.
Never judge.
Book by its pages, right?
Okay. And one of our buddies, Ewart Thomas, who was a dean at Stanford, he's very good friends with Condoleezza, said when she was provost, she raised the salary and tenure of all of the black professors at Stanford University.
Condoleezza.
Yes. And this is coming from someone who was a dean and is still a professor at Stanford.
It's good to have
an old boy of QC too.
An old boy of QC.
Yeah, and a scholar, Ewart Thomas.
You gotta get him on this show one. You gotta put it together.
Yeah.
So let's move on a little bit. Globalization blended with technology and the removal of dictatorial and corrupt individuals could raise the standard of living of those below the poverty line. Your quote.
Yes.
What does this mean to you, Valence?
Well, what it means to me is that the globalization blended with technology, we saw a wonderful demonstration of that after Obama became president the first time. 6 months after, he spoke at the University of Cairo. And if anyone was to go back and read that speech, you could see how subliminally he planted a seed of freedom, right? And because things like Facebook and Twitter were in their embryonic stages, the thing started in Tunisia and it spread like wildfire, and out went Mubarak and Gaddafi and the whole bunch of them. You see what I'm saying? So that is the blended with technology. And oppressive regimes right now and corrupt regimes, because the technology now is so profoundly open, and you can't suppress it. I mean, for instance, I remember when Anna Wintner from Vogue magazine, the editor of Vogue, she and only the editors, when you would go to the top fashion shows, would be sitting in the front row. But now in the front row, you have young bloggers who are giving real time. You see what I'm saying? So the technology was able to change the oppressive nature. And yes, you have to go through a period. It also opened up the gap for the other groups of that are fundamentalists to jump in and do things. But that will not last very long. It's an evolution taking place.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I totally agree with you.
Yes.
Because without it,
yeah.
I wouldn't be here tonight.
Yeah, and
This would not be possible.
what are you doing right now is true reflection of a paradigm shift, and as we were saying, as I mentioned earlier, the Washington Post, Martha Graham, the Washington Post was considered like the New York Times, the supreme two newspapers of the world.
Right.
Right? And if you notice, newspapers were falling apart because they were losing advertising to the digital media. But why did Jeff Bezos go by? Well, if you gotta ask that, then you're not paying attention. He came up with the Kindle. You see? He got people reading in a digital manner. You see? So the Washington Post, he's going to transform it into something that is different. So
let me just go to the chat room a quick second. Mickey asks, what position pan did you play?
I played alto pan and first pan. I could really play any pan. I'm a panist.
And Mickey said, I agree with you, Sel. Valence can tell a story. And Dov said, I can listen to Valence all night. Great conversationalist. So the conversation continues. Let me just ask a couple more, then we take a quick break.
Right.
What can be done to alleviate or put a dent in poverty in Guyana and the Caribbean?
Well, it's interesting that you would ask that question. Because when Lula de Silva became... the Lula de Silva story was quite interesting. Lula de Silva came from the hood. He was a union guy. Mm-hmm. And he saw that, and in Latin America it still continues, where the European descendants were keeping the wealth within a few families, right? That's why you give rise to men like Evo Morales and the Venezuelan, right? And the Bolivian, and our boy in Venezuela that died, Chavez, right? Mm-hmm. See, one has to understand what gives rise to these guys being like this. Well, everyone, Lula was coming through now with more a deep sense of trying to seeing the poverty and wanting to alleviate the poverty. Here's a country with 280 something million people, second largest black population outside of Africa. And the people were poor, but they've got every natural resource. So Lula de Silva, being a man of the people in the hood, decided, okay, I'm coming through. And the first attempt, they came as terrorists. And his buddy, his best friend, was a warrior. He was the gunman. So they lost the election, and his buddy had to go hide. So he went to a plastic surgeon and changed his face and was hiding in Argentina. 4 years later, when he heard that Lula had an opportunity to become president, he went back to the same plastic surgeon, fixed back his face, and came and became the campaign manager and was Lula's chief of staff. So all Lula de Silva did was look around and saw there were 40 million people below the poverty line, and he raised their standard of living. Now, what can we actually do to do that? The only way to do that is to generate economic activity for those people. Everybody needs money. There's a piece that is going around the internet now about a tin city. I don't know.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Right.
Yeah.
And yes, it's terribly depressing. But everyone is talking about how depressing it is. But I mean, problems to me, right? Problems, there's a tendency to focus on the problem. But if you spend too long on the problem, then it takes a longer time to get to the solution. And even the phonetics of the two words, problem, solutions. So let's focus on the solutions of places like the Tin City, and it could be done. And you have to start with the women. You see, the thing that the guy that started the, God, what is it called? Anyway, in India, he started loaning small amounts of money to the women.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
And he found out that because they were getting an opportunity to feed their kids, right? Their repayment rate was 99%. They would get a better repayment rate than the bank. And that grew and spread and became global. So we have to focus on the women that are raising kids, the poor women. They are willing to do things.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I got a phone call today from a sister that attended Bishop's High School.
Yeah.
About that same show. And I promised, I said, in my monologue, I'm going to talk about it, because it really moved me. It really, really did. And one of the things she was saying is the irony of Bishop's High School being not too far away.
Right,
Like a
precisely.
two different words.
Yeah.
Right? But it's our people.
Yeah.
Right? And when I say our, I'm not being racially exclusive here. I'm saying our is Guyanese, because it could be anybody. But here you have this abject poverty.
Yeah.
So close. And so she wants to do something about it. And so I'm glad you brought it up, because it's important that
Yeah, because you see, look, the thing has gone viral. My good friend Chloe Paul sent it to me. I'd already seen it like 10 times by the time she'd sent it to me. So if that could go viral, I think what would the next thing to go viral is what we could do about it, right? What we could do about it, because I hung out in Tiger Bay. I used to have a great time in Tiger Bay growing up, bro. There was a whole hotel named Maracaibo. The older dudes would know that, man. I learned a lot in Maracaibo in Tiger Bay, boy. Telling you.
let's take a break.
God, we gotta save Tiger Bay.
Arrowhead. I don't think you heard me. I said,
We are back.
Hello.
With the illustrious Valence Williams. So Valence, how are you holding up?
Well, I'm enjoying the water. I'm enjoying the conversation, and to know that there are people listening and responding is very effervescent, I must say.
Good, wonderful. I want us to start off with this question. What do you consider to be the key reasons you were able to last so long on Wall Street, admired, loved, and respected by so many?
Well, because when I got to Wall Street was such a bastion of racism, and that coming with the political struggle within me, I knew that I had to definitely perform, but more than perform, to stand strong and make sure that I'm not the only one, because when I got there, every brokerage house I went to, I was the only black that was trading. And so I took it a step further. See, you were either a commodity broker, a futures broker, or you were trading equities and bonds. So I decided to be part of the group that did both. You know what I mean?
So, many of us younger men admire your penchant for, or your depthness of dressing and your swagger. What can you tell us about your sense of style?
My sense of style, I think, came from hanging on the corner in GT. You know, we everybody had a tailor. Everything was tailored. The shirt was tailored. Your pants was tailored. You know, and nobody on the, you know, one of your boys was your tailor, and nobody wore the same thing. We were all in the same gang, but everybody, it was individualism. You see, so it was something. It's more than fashion. It's just style. Because fashion comes and goes. Style just remains.
What I want to ask you is, what happened at that key turning point when you decided your career path?
I don't know that. My career really is talking. That's really what it is, because my business, I talk to clients. That's what I really do. I talk.
What happened? Well, actually, especially for the youngsters now venturing into corporate America, tell us, how important is it to always be properly attired?
Well, you know, that would have been a powerful question maybe 30 years ago, where we wore bow ties and suspenders. There was no heat on the train. I mean, and you imagine the last couple of weeks ago, we were still wearing suspenders. You had to be dressed up all the time. But then came the digital age. And the guys from AOL and Yahoo that started that, they stopped wearing ties and all that stuff. Now you got Mark Zuckerberg. He sends his guys to pick up a $20 million check on a skateboard. So the whole dress code has changed, man.
If you could go back and change something related to your education or training, what would you change or what would you do differently?
One of the things I would pay more focus to is simple arithmetic, because I found out that seems to be the base of programming. Therefore, since.
Therefore, since. Let me go to the chat room for a second. Since we talked about education, I want to get into this discussion about Coursera. Right, but let me go to the chat room and see what they're saying. G said, sounds like Valence will have to come back. I agree with that. Dove said, who is his favorite male designer and his favorite woman designer? You want to take that quickly?
You know, this is why I you know, favorite male designer and favorite female designer. God, that is a tough one for me, because one wouldn't know them.
Yes.
You know, they came from the corner in GT, man.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So,
okay.
Both male and female.
Okay.
Because Armani, I ain't impressed with, you know. I seen that before.
But while you're on that corp, let me ask you this before you get to the top.
Right.
What does it mean to you being Guyanese?
Being Guyanese? Oh, what it meant to me, oh God, that's a wonderful one. Because when I came to the United States, I noticed that the very wealthy, if they wanted to eat Indian food, they had to go to a Chinese Indian restaurant. If they wanted Chinese food, they had to go to a Chinese restaurant. Damn, and I was cooking curry on Monday, Lau Mein on Tuesday night. And I said, damn. Then comes this word globalization. And all this was trying to understand the rest of the world. And I know about Chinese, I know about East Indians, I know about black folks, I know about Portuguese, I know about Amerindians, and they still don't know what globalization was.
Globalization. So let me stick to the chat room for a quick second, because I want to go on to MOOC, right? So Rain Rocket said, thanks, Sel, I guess, for bringing up the Tin City thing or elaborating on it. Rain Rockets again. Okay, Valence, let's not go to Maracaibo as yet. Rain Rockets, Valence, let's not go to Maracaibo as yet. Okay. And Gary said, yes, he does have style. So, Coursera, taking advantage of the new education phenomenon, MOOC.
MOOC means massive open line courses. Coursera has partnered with 84 leading universities, right?
Right.
around the world. Stanford, Columbia, Princeton, all the Ivy League universities and stuff. It's what they're referring to it as a very and they're disrupting the 4.4 trillion education industry by opening up, creating continuous improvement in your education. See, the old way you got out of college at 25, you didn't continue learning. But now all this stuff is done for free. You can sit, if you wanted to learn physics right now, or molecular genetics, you can learn that on Coursera for free from from professors at MIT. And in terms of paying attention and investing, right? Facebook in the first year had 1.5 million people every month. Coursera had 3 million people. So this educational Facebook, Coursera is the educational Facebook. So it's something that I really, really would like more people to pay attention to and utilize. Because I think I had mentioned to you that the language, Python, that been around for a while,
right,
they're offering free courses. In fact, I signed up to do it in the fall. And because I found out that it is this is the prolific programming language that is being used to program apps. So, and this is free. So this is what they're calling MOOC. It's combined with Code Academy and peer-to-peer. So please write that down. COURSERA. Coursera.
Coursera.
And it's a pioneer and a leader. The emerging trend is called MOOC, Massive Online, Open Online Courses. Go up on the internet and check on it as soon as we get off this show, and share it with the young people in your family.
What is all this freeness? I mean, this is a hell of a paradigm shift in education.
Yeah.
What does this mean to those who have invested lots of money in online education where they're charging a lot of money for?
What did it mean to the people that cannot, even if you're bright enough, can't get to Harvard, Stanford,
Amen.
Yale, or MIT?
Amen.
So you create this class that they call the Ivy League, right? But you got a kid that is brighter than half of the people in the Ivy League schools, but you can't get there because you got to pay $50,000 every semester.
True.
You see what I'm saying? And the monies that were set aside. You know, one of the things that Johnny Cochran, as a member of 100 Black Men, Johnny Cochran was a wonderful guy. Because when O.J. Simpson was sinking, he had 4 white lawyers, right? Mm-hmm. He was sinking. And because the boys knew that Johnny was the one we sent in to get off the Black Panthers, we called a meeting and said, Johnny, you got to go save O.J. You know? Because if you were around in 1972 and you saw O.J. run for that 2,072 yards, boy, we all loved the juice. So he was the first black athlete that got the big commercials. So, like everything else, he was turned into the other side. Mm-hmm. Right? It was happening then. Johnny Cochran told him, say, look, fire those 4 other lawyers you have and come over to my house and sit down. Johnny Cochran dressed him. Cochran did some research and found out that Judge Ito, his parents were interned when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, right? They rounded up all the Japanese and put them into an internment camp. Judge Ito's parents were interned. So Cochran was smart enough to transmit to Ito that he was quite aware of that injustice. Mm-hmm. So all he had to say after that is, if the glove don't fit, you must acquit.
What do we need to know, or why should the average person pay attention to Coursera?
Coursera, because it's about the road ahead. Mm-hmm. If you notice, you could think about yourself, or you could think about the generations coming behind you. You may notice in your family, if a 2-year-old got hold of your cell phone, all of a sudden, or your iPad, they fascinated, they're They almost know what to do already.
Oh, yes.
So this is where the generation is going. In 1990, Bill Gates. The Bill Gates story is interesting because the road ahead. IBM came up with the computer, but it was difficult to maneuver.
Right.
So all Bill Gates did really was look at this thing and said, when they started, they made the motor car. Initially, you had to crank it from outside to start it.
Right.
And one person thought about the word user-friendly. Why can't we sit in the car and start it? So Windows, that was the user-friendly aspect, and the personal computer exploded. So in 1993, he wrote a book said, everything is going to go digital. That was in 93. And so it did. So now there's a new digital age. And that's the book that is written by Eric Schmidt, who's the executive chairman of Google. And I urge you all to make an attempt to read that.
Everything
Yes.
is going to go
Digital.
digital.
That's what Bill Gates said in 93, and so it did. So Eric Schmidt, now the chairman of Google, did a trip around the world to observe all this thing. He wrote about the whole Arab Spring and how technology is being utilized now. And technology is helping to alleviate poverty in Africa a lot also. You see me? Because the fisherwoman that lives out in the country, for her to sell her fish, she had to use a middleman. She didn't know what the price was down in the city in the market. Right. So the middleman was beating her. But now she could keep her fish fresh on the line, in the water, and call down to the city and find out what the real price is. That's what the mobile tsunami is really helping. And you see, this years ago we were also told that everything is going to be mobile, and here we are experiencing it. So the new digital age by Eric Schmidt, if you can make a note of that, is there's a lot of interesting information in there. For instance, like the pill that was approved by the FDA in 2012 by a company called Proteus Hill. You swallow the pill, and if it's one of your family or whoever that has high diabetes, high blood pressure, the pill is an electronic pill that interacts with the acids in the body and sends a message to a patch on your shoulder that sends that message directly to your doctor. So if there's an emergency, boom, they can move on it right away.
Save lives.
Save lives.
When you were a kid, my young niece in Guyana corrected me while she was 3 or 4 years old. I asked her about some kid, and she said to me, "Uncle Selwyn, I'm not a kid, I'm a child." So let me correct that. When you were a young child, who would you say got you? I mean, really understood you?
Who really understood me? Boy, my mother. My mother and my grandmother. They really understood because they were the keepers of the castle. They understood because they paid more attention. You know, fathers don't pay as much attention to all the little nuances as mothers and grandmothers do. Grandmothers, for some reason, seem to be forgiving. Because I've noticed in a lot of families, even the murderer, the thief, the crackhead, grandma would say, "Come and I will take you in."
Why is that?
The reason for that is because somebody has to be the cradle. Because the grandma, over a period of time, realizes that there's going to be imperfections.
Yes.
And, you know, I had an opportunity to, one of my youngest brother was legally insane. And to understand insanity is quite challenging, but also very entertaining. And I remember watching a movie called A Beautiful Mind, which was with Russell Crowe. He even won an Academy Award.
Yes.
He was a physicist. The man was legally insane. But he couldn't, no psychologist or psychiatrist could have brought him out of it. His wife did, with love and compassion. And then he won the Nobel Peace Prize. So my grandmother My mother, they could fix anything that is wrong with me.
You know, I'm glad you said that because it takes me back to a few sentences earlier when we were talking about Tin City,
Yeah,
and you said the women
gotta get the women.
we have to get the women, we have
Gotta
to
get
encourage
them.
them.
They're poor.
You mentioned your grandmother, you mentioned your mother. I have no quarrels there. I strongly believe that women are the foundation
Yeah,
of any society, any nation.
That's a cradle.
But you tell us from your experience or your wisdom, why? Why should we pay attention to the
Well,
women of our community?
Well, you know, with respect to if we take Tin City as an example, and you look to places like India, where there's extreme poverty. I mean, China now is now coming out of it, but you know, there's still extreme poverty. See, there's poverty and extreme poverty. This is why, God, the one from Colombia, I forgot his name, economist. The work now that is being done globally is what Bill Gates and them are really focusing on. Not poverty. Extreme poverty is when the people that eat in once a week. Tin City. So that could be something that because that thing became so viral, and I could see that the impact it has had. I got friends in Germany, Guyanese in Germany, and we were all communicating about this Tin City. This Tin City could be the beginning of something very big.
I agree.
Whoever was smart enough to put it into to the digital space, thank you.
Yes,
Because we're going to move on it.
I agree.
We're going to move on it. I really sincerely believe so. Because everybody, you could see the impact it had. And that is part of why I said that what technology does. If there was no cyberspace, Tin City could continue forever.
Very true. We wouldn't be having these conversations.
But now we could talk about it.
Yeah.
Now your listeners have heard about it, even if they haven't seen it. Right?
Now they could go and look for it.
Yeah, they could go look for it.
Yeah.
You know.
From our conversation, I get a sense great relationships and camaraderie are important tenets to you. Who among your childhood friends has made a lasting impact on you and why?
Oh man, so many of them. So many of them.
Good.
Because it was a period, Guyana at that time was a period of just excellence in everything. I think the way I say it to my son, he said to me, because he was born here, Dad, why is it every Guyanese has this attitude like they're the brightest people in the world? I said, I've been asked that before, but what I can remember from kindergarten is everybody always walked into class at the beginning wanting to bring first.
True.
So that was my basic way of explaining that. I never knew anybody. I came to America, they just wanted to pass. Everybody in Guyana wanted to bring first.
Competition was
competition
was
was
heavy.
competition. So I was impressed by a lot of people, you know, and we played lots of games. You know, for instance, we were just something like having to make your own kite. It's not until I got much older I understood that the loop on that kite had quite a bit of physics going on, but nobody explained it to us. We just knew how to make it to get the kite to go
Right.
up. But there was some physics going on in it. You know what I mean? So when you take that away, the kids that go up here, they see the kites. In fact, in China right now, they just had a big, they have an annual kite flying extravaganza like we did back in the day. You know?
Really? You're an investment banker, a salesman. You
Yeah.
sell. Did your interest in selling come as a child, when you were as a child?
Yeah, because my father was selling beef, man.
Yeah.
You know, but I didn't see it. I never really saw him as selling. This man, when he going to do business, it was a party. You know, because he brought the, you know, it was relationship based with him. He did business with people that were friends. You know? So that's what I said.
Talking about the gap, you know, does selling come naturally to you? And I don't mean in your capacity as an investment banker or a trader, but in your interactions with others. How has it worked in your favor?
Well, it's worked in my favor because And the reality of human behavior is that we, we're all buying and selling all at the same time. So if you say to yourself, someone says, I don't know, I don't like to sell or I cannot sell, then you got a problem. You're just a buyer.
Predator or prey.
Predator. So you got to be doing both things, you know. And I mean, if people think of selling as something where you got to make somebody buy an object, well, it starts from the time of birth. You got to be able to transmit to your child
Right.
how to do certain things. It's a selling job.
In what ways is being an investment banker fun to you?
Being an investment banker and a trader is definitely exciting, because trading is about being able to recognize trends. And it's really about buying straw hats in the winter and selling them in the summer. You know, so that's the only way I could have simplified what I saw about Wall Street. And Wall Street is always looking there because nothing stays the same, right? There are companies that have been around for a long time, but they had to reinvent themselves. And, I mean, you take McDonald's, right, which every kid knows about. They're always working on reinventing their menu and things because of competition. So selling in itself is something that it's natural humanistic behavior, you know.
I want to shift gears a little bit
Go ahead.
and go to some of these organizations you've been part of. You were an ex-chairman of the International Committee for 100 Black Men of New York.
That was started by Charlie Rangel
Charlie
and Percy Sutton and those boys up in Harlem.
And then you convinced the organization to open a junior high school in Brooklyn as a feeder for the Eagle Academy. Tell us why was such an initiative important?
Well, what had happened when we started the high school up in the Bronx, we had to share space with another school. And God bless Hillary Clinton. She gave the group $25 million, so we got our own school. But we realized that we were trying to train leaders, right? Because the statistics are getting horrible that there were so many more young black women graduating from college and stuff. So we made it a all-boys school, right? And we had them dressed like we dressed back in the day. You know? But then we realized that if you don't have a certain foundation, we were able to get high numbers going to college. But the recognition that if we caught these guys at an earlier stage, right, you needed to catch them in junior high school and then prepare them. So by the time they got to the Eagle Academy in high school, they were on a higher level. So now they the whole process is really much better. So I told them that you got to come to Brooklyn. I mean, you got it in the Bronx, which is closer to Harlem. Let the feeder be. So it's on Herkimer.
So I asked this question: how important is attitude, especially as an advice to young people entering the workforce?
Entering the workforce?
Yeah, attitude. How important is that?
Well, I think that, you know, certain attitudes is like you got to be willing to work hard. You got to be willing to be punctual, you know? I mean, at my age, I'm still the first one in the office. I'm not still, I used to be the last to leave, but now I leave a little earlier. You know what I mean?
You
But,
still have strong work ethic.
Yes, strong work ethic. And every business is about generating revenue so you can make profit. So you have to stand up. So you got to go the extra mile. You know what I mean? I was managing 100 brokers in a commodity brokerage house after 3 months on Wall Street.
Wow.
Yeah.
You have been described as an advocate for cultural awareness and justice in our community. Does that fit?
Oh yes, definitely. That's why I got on the community board. Because when the first time I walked into a community board meeting, I was the only one in there without a beanie cap. And the Star David.
You know, and you've also been described as suave,
Suave.
articulate, and helpful. Does that also fit?
Articulate and helpful certainly fits. But I don't know about suave because suave seems like a word that one, as though that's an act.
Right.
You know what I mean? So this is reality. What if it seems like suave is reality? It's me being me.
So what would you use instead of? I think I understand where they're coming from with that. Smooth.
It's mambo.
Mambo. I like that. I like that. What are some essential skills to being a good investment banker?
Essential skills: recognizing opportunities,
Okay.
being able to put people together, because they're people with ideas,
Yes.
right? And then they're the people that will fund those ideas. And it's the guys that come in between and bring those two people together that they refer to as the investment bankers. Putting the deal together.
Put it a deal.
And right now, with Guyana and its natural resources and the private equity area, and I just joined a fantastic private equity group. I'm working to bring some of them into the Caribbean in general.
Hold a second. Somebody LK says it would be nice if the stream was working. Valence has so much to share that I am missing. I hope the recorded program runs smoothly. Karen said, Valence, you show from the way you connect everything and tell the story that talent is surely overrated. It's all about smarts. And Karen said the stream is still jumping, so lots of the convo has been missed. Rain Rocket said, growing up in Guyana back in the day, there was a tenacity to excel at whatever we do. We need to find a way to instill this in the present generation. Education is a poor man's salvation. All right, where are we? We have 11 more minutes. I'm going to try something.
With the stream?
Yes, I'm going to try something because some people are saying that the stream is jumping a little bit.
Yeah, well.
I'm going to try to, what I'm going to do, I'm going to restart
Go
the
ahead.
stream. Let's see if that fixes the problem. So when I restart, refresh your computer. So let's take a break.
And we'll keep enhancing the technology.
Exactly.
Let's keep working on it. You're on the right track.
Exactly.
You'll get better.
Let's do this. Okay, thank you for your patience and your time. I just restarted the whole system to see if we can alleviate the jumping that some people are experiencing. So I hope this is much better. This conversation is much too important for me not to listen to the audience. I think without you, the show will not be successful, and so it is important for me to listen to what you're saying. So let me bring Valence back on and take it from there. Yes, Valence. You were saying that, well, Rain Rocket said growing up in Guyana back in the day, there was the tenacity to excel at whatever we do. We need to find a way to instill this in the present generation. Education is a poor man's salvation.
Starts from the home.
Yes.
It starts from the home.
When any particular technical or more specifically cyber trends that you've been particularly impressed by?
Oh my God, Elon Musk is a beast. Elon Musk looked around in the early days of this thing and decided that the yellow pages needed to be digitized.
Yeah.
And he came up with a company called Zip2, which Compaq bought for $300 million. And then he moved and saw that we're all going to be on the internet, people selling things. How do we secure payments? So he came up with PayPal.
That's the same guy?
Yes. And then he did, and from PayPal, he said, why don't we go to Mars? SpaceX. And then he's realized that, oh, every time the price of gasoline goes up, it's a problem. Electric car, Tesla. And Tesla has just gone from $26 to $158 and turned a profit, right? And his next venture is the Hyperloop, where you're in the tube, you could get from New York to San Francisco in 30 minutes. Bloomberg did a hell of a thing on him last night. And he has the best solar panel company. It's called Solar City. This guy's a beast, man.
Given how our society is evolving technologically, what do you believe is the next big technical boom that will surprise many of us?
Well, I think that the electric car is going to be one, because it's going to be for a first. There are three major car companies, and here comes a guy that says he's going to have filling stations, all and you're filling up for free. Oh. So it's going to be interesting to see what that does to the Middle East. You know what I mean?
What are some types of technical that are important to you?
The technical things that I think will be interesting is in speaking with my niece, who is a new molecular geneticist, is some of the things that technology would do for the lethal diseases like cancer and diabetes, all the things that are killing people. I see where people can live longer, because there's some simple things that, diseases that are killing people. So I think technology can move. Just from things like the other day I was watching a show that the hygienic part of when you're in a hospital, there's a new machine now that just keeps all the germs at bay, you know. So those are some of the things that I think. And I think the fact that data, now the data is so quickly, it's real-time data. If you're operating on someone and another expert that can help you is 1,000 miles away, he can get that data and you can work together simultaneously.
What can you tell us about money and how we approach and handle money as a community that does not work in our favor?
Well, money, when you say money, it's really important to break it down, because cash of itself, actual cash, is like the most offensive thing, because it's the value, it's your assets that is value. For instance, like just this little painting you have on your wall, man. The real wealthy, you'll find they take the cash and put it into, they invest it into things that grow. Whether it's
Painting,
paint, artworks,
artwork.
sculptures, and things of that nature. Because cash, if you keep cash around, it's gone. You know. So I think that one of the things I've seen from Wall Street is that there is always a trend of the next big thing, or you look around and see things that the society uses. What are people going to be eating? Like, everybody's going organic, right? Whole foods and stuff like that. So you look at certain trends of things that would be important to human beings, things that people will be using in mass. This is why Stephen Jobs is so effective. He knew how to design. He was able to combine technology and art.
Art. Yeah.
You see what I mean?
What can you say you've learned about investing or money and investing it that you believe many of us do not know?
I think what I've learned is being able to look at timing. Timing is important because when you're starting out with small amounts of money, you have to be much more perceptive of what is going to be the next thing so that you can move early and catch it when it's least expensive. Then if you have money, you can hold on for a longer time through the ups and downs. So, and knowing when to cash in. So it's all
Well, time is upon us. I mean, it's 10 o'clock already.
10 o'clock.
But I have some rapid fire questions. But let me go to the chat room quickly. Rain Rocket said there are issues with the electric car. For that to take off, they still need to find a way for it to go beyond 100 miles. And then LK said, on a side, wearing a hat indoors is a no-no. But I love to see the hat Dapper V wore today. He does have a hat today.
Thanks.
And what do you look forward to doing on weekends?
On weekends, it could be a range of things. There was a time, right? As time changes.
Yeah.
On weekends, we used to get dressed up from Friday and party till Sunday.
Yes.
Now on weekends, I like reading now on weekends. On weekends, I like good eating, dining, eat good restaurants and things of that nature. And basically catching up with friends that I don't get to see too often. Yes.
And what type of reading do you do on a daily basis?
I read a range of things, man. A range of things. I read on the train every morning. On my phone.
What ticks you off?
What ticks me off? Injustice. I'm still a revolutionary. If you want to see me go for my guns, then let me see some unnecessary abuse of people that can't help themselves.
Rain Rocket said partying. I think Rain Rocket is including that as one of the things you like to do on the weekend.
Well, partying for me is a way of life. It's a way of life. From the time I wake up in the morning, it's a party. It's a party.
And Rain Rocket said, last question. So what happened at the Maracaibo?
At the Maracaibo? At the Maracaibo in the day, and I really think I know this guy Ray Rocket because he reminds me very much of a couple of dudes that would never leave Maracaibo after 2-3 weeks and they're still in the hotel. In Maracaibo, there were no rules. You could do anything in Maracaibo. And it was a place where there was, it was pretty much like Amsterdam, the red light district.
By the way, it's Rain Rockets I'm saying Rain Rockets is Rain Rockets, and Rain Rockets said I am a woman.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Ray Rockets. My sincere apologies.
Yes. Well, there's no way of knowing from the chat.
Yeah,
room
well,
names, yeah.
listen, not a problem. Yes, but Maracaibo was like Amsterdam, the red light district.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, we were way ahead of our time.
really?
Yes, it was fantastic. I mean, I was in my early adolescent stage, but fantastic.
What is the hardest thing you've ever done?
The hardest thing I've done. I don't think I could think of something that was really hard, man.
Okay, let me narrow it down in terms of
What
a
was
job or work.
I,
What is the most difficult or challenging job you've ever
I
had?
wouldn't say that the job was challenging. The challenge might have been the people that I had to work with, that I had to get into their heads, that who I am
Yes.
and what I can do. And because you got to remember, I hit Cooperate America when I was a first wave. So I had to put in their heads. I had to beat some heads down, because you could see racism coming at you before, from the time you walked through the door. This was like the early 80s. There was a wave of us that came out of graduate schools of business and law schools and stuff. We all came to New York at the same time. It was the first time they were going to see professional young blacks. So we had to be strong. So that was the ultimate challenge. The work wasn't challenging.
And what's next for Valence Williams?
Well, next, to continue talking.
Continue talking. We are bringing you back on,
I would love that.
right? We bring you back on because this conversation is now warming up. A question I ask all my guests: what makes you laugh out loud?
It makes me laugh out loud when I'm partying, man. I love a party.
Rain Rockets told me to ask you what drives you.
What drives me?
Yes.
I think that what really drives me is the people around me having a real good time, like we had just had,
Yes.
right? And to have some social interaction,
Yes.
that makes me driven.
So you love the chat room.
Yes, I love the chat room. I think that's fantastic.
And when LK said, I vote for a return of Dapper V to CWS. All in favor say aye. Pretty please. And Rain Rocket said, we all know you love to party. And before I forget, Donna Dove
Oh, my girl.
asked me to give you a special shout out tonight. She is one of the women of CWS. She was on the show.
Yeah, I saw that, and she's in fact, when she started the band Pagua,
Yes.
I was one of the early participants. If I'm not mistaken, she might have gone to high school with my niece, but that is she's very, very creative,
Oh, yes.
and I plan to play Blue Devils with her.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I was there last Friday night. It was a
Okay.
great party.
Sam said, Rain Rocket said, aye. That is voting for you to come back. Sam said, aye, pretty please. And so I think there's a consensus out there for you to come back.
Yeah,
now that you're part of CWS,
I will.
right?
I certainly will.
Um,
Because I haven't started talking yet.
I know. I want to ask you this. I want to close off the show, but I want to ask you this question before we close.
Right.
It's gonna be twofold. Let me ask this one. I want you, when we close off, to give us a few words of wisdom or advice. Right? That's standard. But the question I have here is about your political instincts at Howard University. I know you touched a little bit of it,
Yeah.
but I could never get enough of that. And I know many in the audience could never get enough of that time. Tell us about that, how Howard University shaped or molded your political instinct.
Well, You know, first it started on campus where we had a political organization. Yeah, the school's political organization. You had the liberal arts. I was in the School of Business. You had the several schools of engineering, and then there was a main body. The main body was, you had a president, a vice president, and every school had a senator. I was a senator from the School of Business. I never lost an election, right? So we got together. It was pretty much like the Senate, you know, with a president, a vice president, and senators. And every senator represented their school, right? And from that, in fact, my buddy, Ian Richards, he was the head of the Caribbean American Association. And because there were lots of other West Indians there, it was a wonderful experience. So there were, in fact, it was a group of us that started the Trinidad and Tobago Association in Washington, D.C. See, there were no blurred lines, you know? So it was a fantastic time. So today, Elijah Cummings from Baltimore, who is one of the most prolific representatives in Congress, I think he's now a chairman of a committee, he and I were campus politicians together, right? So it really has, so it's always in my being. It's just endemic.
What can you say to our young people today?
I would say that they've got the greatest opportunity now and ease for which to learn just about everything, because we didn't have all this technology and this flow of information. The information is at their fingertips. There should be nobody that is ignorant or dumb or not knowing. And look at the influx of, there's Khan Academy that gives you free teaching on math and physics and things of that. That's free. There's Code Academy to teaching you how to program and code. There's Coursera giving you free education from the Ivy League schools. Come on, just get up and do it. Just do it.
I think what I'm going to do for CWS audience is get from you a list
Yeah.
of these institutions,
Right.
and I'm going to post them.
Post them, certainly.
Right? I promise.
Yeah,
you.
and you know, the thing is, it's good to talk about it, but
You got to do it.
yeah,
You got to do it.
yeah, and remind them to use it.
G said, I, again, LK, thank you, viewers. I want to see his hat, please, Cello. Sam, yes, hat, please. There must be a hat to accompany that wonderfully sartorial cravat. Yeah, sartorial. I've been admiring the cravat myself, Valence. So, they're asking for your hat.
I'll bring it next time.
Next. I have other questions, but I have to respect the time.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for coming.
I appreciate it. I
For
really
being
do.
so generous with your time.
I really do. I really.
Right. This has been indeed an honor for me,
yeah.
for our audience, and I also want to thank our audience for being so patient.
Yeah.
And understanding this technology. It's new. It's well, what I've put together. It's different, and thank you for being so patient and tuning in every week to listen to me. We're all growing together, and I appreciate
one of the things I forgot to mention, that there's a new phenomena that is taking place in manufacturing called 3D printing. Listen carefully. It's called 3D printing or additive manufacturing. This is what is bringing jobs back to the United States. And the three companies are 3D Systems, Stratasys, and X1. If you were to pay attention to these things and to really focus on it, there will be jobs. That's where the jobs are being created, right?
3D printing.
3D printing.
The messages keep coming in. Valence LK says hat and specs together. Rain Rocket says said, "Thanks so much, Valence. I enjoyed tremendously, my friend."
Thank you very much.
Right, and thank you. And this is Selwyn Collins saying good night. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow, my guest is Samantha Griffith. Tune in the same time, 8:30 to 10. Good night.
Good night. That was good. 3D Systems, Stratasys, STRATYSIS, Systems, and EXONE, X1 company. These companies have exploded in value. It's called additive manufacturing. It started out with the computer making a three-dimensional image, and it's transmitted to the 3D machine. It started out with plastic, but now it's upgraded to metal and everything. This is the new wave, and it's hit Wall Street. People have made tons of money already, the ones that caught it early. And I think someone mentioned something about the electric car.
Right.
Go look at the Bloomberg piece on Elon Musk. Every time they told that guy that he couldn't do it, he did it. And it's a reality. It's going to happen. It's already happening.
Determination. Thanks again, Valence. Thank you.
Suffer the little children to come unto me. Every day more than 30,000 children around the world die of preventable diseases. More than 300,000 children are being used in war as child soldiers. Lord have mercy.